Brattleboro resident Andrew Leclaire lost his battle with ALS on August 28, 2016.
Trying to get used to the quiet, not having him around. Andy was my energy.
Sadness is the first thing that comes to mind. Confusion, anger. People are very often surprised by the anger that they feel, and they feel guilty. So guilt is part of it.
A doctor did not. He knew it ran in Andy's family. And knowing that Andy was having difficulty walking and was very weak, he kept saying, well, let's try to see if it's this. Let's try it. So Andy had to work. That whole time, that whole year of wasting, Andy's time. And we knew that what the gene was called. He could have just looked at it and see if it was active or whatever. And then Andy could have had that 1 year where he was walking pretty good, where we could actually go places and do things before it got bad. But no, he worked until he couldn't stand anymore. He said that as many times as he was laying there in pain, I would ask if he wanted something like ibuprofen, a little bit of morphine. I won't give you a lot. He said no. He says, Jesus suffered for us on the cross. He says, I need to suffer a little bit.
It's very difficult to watch someone that you love suffer. So I think that's part of that feeling of, I want this to be over. Not just to relieve me, but to relieve the one that I love of the suffering and the decline.
He asked to leave because he couldn't do anything anymore. He couldn't talk. He couldn't use his hands, his legs. And when he asked to leave, all he said was pray. And then he said, go. I said, Andrew, do you want to meet Jesus? You want to go with Jesus? Do you want to go with him today, now? And he goes, I said, all right, honey. I said, okay, you can go. And hugged him and told him, you don't have to panic. I'll be with you the whole time. And later I talked to myself and said, I feel better about him making the decision and not something I had to do. And I was comfortable with his decision.
We're human beings. When we experience a death, there is a loss there. There's a time that the church says we are to mourn, we are to grieve, we are to experience this loss, which Andy is very fond of the Beatitudes, and one of them in particular. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Mourning, grieving, that's a reality that we experience. You will mourn, but don't mourn as being a people without hope. So certainly mourning, grieving, it will happen. It's normal, it's natural, it needs to happen. But at the same time, that time of grieving and mourning will end, as our Lord says in the Beatitudes, and we will be comforted. We will experience blessedness.
I think the first step is to understand that what you're experiencing is deep grief. It often throws people off.
The last couple of weeks, I've been feeling tired. Extremely tired. Just trying to catch up on my sleep. Didn't realize I was that sleep deprived.
Understanding that you're going to be tired, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be, this lack of concentration.
I know he was a quiet person, but he was very intelligent. And if you could get a smile out of him, you know you've hit his emotional side. the orchestra that came, bless their souls, he cried. He had tears. He didn't sob, he just had loving tears for what he was hearing. And when Father came every time, Andy's mood could be really low, but when Father came and knocked on the door, he was just so happy that someone was coming to see him.
It truly is inspirational to me because I see that as his body becomes weaker, his faith becomes stronger.
I see him before the disease. I know that during his last few months, I was forgetting how he was. And it started to bother me. I said, I can't think of him any other way but in the bed. And I kept worrying that I wasn't going to remember how he was. But I think the pictures of Andy with the kids and the family and all the outings we had here have helped a lot. That I can see him the way he was before. But Andy's wish, I think, was that people really need to know about that this disease can be hereditary. Understanding of how fast it moves so that when the disease is working on somebody, things have to be there to make life easier for them. He was a very proud man. He didn't like to ask for things, he would just get up and get them. And at some point, I had to actually, Andrew, you have to ask me. You have to ask me, it's okay. So it was hard for him, but he did. He asked for things like, can I have a cup of coffee? Don't take the little things for granted.
You're so busy.